One of the most common and overlooked root causes of chronic anxiety is revealed when you look at the way that you were raised. And this is your parents, this is your school, this is your extended family. Like if you spend a lot of time with family events and gatherings, then include this in that as well. If one of your parents, and really, you guys, anybody who contributed to raising you, and think about how much time you spent in the school system and how many teachers you were exposed to who probably had challenges like this as well. So if you could say any authority figure in your life, especially in the first like 10 years of your life, smoke, drank, overate, then they had a high need for control. Those two things go together, the addiction and a high need for control goes together automatically. And, somebody I was speaking with recently said to me, well, they only drank, a beer after work. But it's like, is that every day, every week, every month, every day? Okay. So somebody who drinks a beer every day after work, which means they're tired, they're stressed, they have uncomfortable emotions, that's addiction. They're addicted. They require some form of substance, some form of medication to ease their emotional state. They're dependent on that substance. And we don't tend to think of that as a dependency because it's so normal. But let's just get clear that that is a dependency. So if somebody has a dependency like that, then they have a high need for control. And they weren't just in the reason that they needed the the reason that they had this high need for control was because they were out of control emotionally. If somebody's out of control emotionally, they're going to feel this craving for control. And they weren't just out of control when you saw them drinking, when you saw them smoking or overeating. They were out of control all of the time. People aren't just emotionally out of control some of the time. If you're out of control emotionally, it's all of the time. Sometimes you have a little bit more of a handle on your emotions than others. But if this is a challenge for somebody, then it's a challenge all of the time. Just, there's a spectrum to it. And so your parents may have been obvious about this lack of control, right? It may have been obvious and they may have shown that with the addictive substance use, with that dependency on substances. But they may have been dependent on relationships. That's a very subtle way of showing how they were out of control emotionally. Another obvious way is yelling. That is a very obvious way of somebody showing that they're out of control emotionally. There may have been more subtle ways of showing that they were out of control emotionally, which are that they were passive aggressive or manipulative or using emotions to control you. Now, some of you watching this may have a hard time hearing this because your parents were very nice people. Maybe you had a great relationship with them. Maybe they were, some of the best people in your life, but that doesn't mean that they were healthy. You can have parents who are very who are very kind and loving and sweet, and also not be healthy. And they may have been so subtle about this passive aggressiveness or manipulation or using emotions to control you that you didn't realize it. So if that's what you're feeling now, then take a moment when the video's done or right now and get very present with this and ask yourself, okay, did I feel shame around my parents? Did I feel underappreciated? Did I feel like I wasn't enough? around them. Those are signs, those are subtle signs that you are being emotionally manipulated. And parents don't try to manipulate their kids. That is just, like I said, they don't have control over their emotions, and so that is a natural response for somebody who doesn't have control. That's one way that they feel in control, is when they are manipulating somebody. With kids, I mean, to get kids to do something just to survive as a parent, you've got to get your kids to do stuff, and if you don't have emotional control, then the only option you have is manipulation. The only option you have is either emotional or physical force to get your kids to do stuff. So if your parents did not have that emotional control and that emotional stability, then you can automatically assume that they use some of these tactics with you while raising you. So growing up in this kind of environment is very emotionally straining on a child, and it causes them to develop false stories about themselves and about the world. And kid, because of the emotional manipulation that they grew up with, however subtle or extreme that was, they learned not to trust on a deep level. So coming back around to the root cause of anxiety, um, chronic anxiety, if you on a deep level are not able to trust and have faith that, you're being supported by a higher power, and that you're okay and that you're safe and protected. I know consciously we know these things, but if you go really deep, do you really feel that? And lack of trust is one of the biggest reasons that somebody gets anxiety. And the reason that people have lack of trust is often because they couldn't really trust the people that they grew up with. And that reason is because of this emotional instability of the parents. And so, just to loop it back around to what we talked about in the beginning, if your parents smoked, drank, overate, or had this dependency on relationships, then that automatically means that you grew up in an overstrained emotional environment because of their need for control and their need to manipulate things in order to have the control that they need, because they are so out of control themselves. So I hope this was helpful for you. And so now that you know what one of the most common and overlooked root causes of anxiety is, I mean, who talks about this, right? When it comes to anxiety. Um, so I hope that this was helpful for you. And now the next step is like, okay, what do we do about this? Well, the first step is to start being really present with your emotions. Like start slowing down, becoming present, and taking care of you first, taking care of your highest needs, and making that the number one priority, and developing a greater connection with yourself, which is a natural process to slowing down and becoming present. And through this process of slowing down and becoming present, you're naturally going to be able to gain clarity around different fears that you have, different beliefs that are holding you back, and all these things that contribute to your anxiety. And through the recharge process, you go through this process of eliminating these emotional patterns and these beliefs, and you develop this connection like you've never had before. You develop this sense of self-compassion and self-love that was never possible before, because of the programming and that hard wiring that you received as a result of growing up in this emotionally stressful environment, whether it was at home or at school or with extended family. Um, so let's see. Natalie says addiction was rampant in my childhood with both my parents. Both parents were also anger and rage. Oh my gosh. Yes. And Natalie, that is, definitely one of the obvious causes of anxiety for kids. And if somebody who's listening did not have that experience of where their parents were pretty normal, they were pretty calm and relaxed. Um, Sometimes that is even more challenging because it's not as obvious and it's not as easy to see the problem because it feels normal, it feels okay. But if there's chronic anxiety, then that is a red flag that maybe it wasn't okay. Maybe it wasn't as okay as you thought. Let's see, Natalie says, this is why I'm doing the healing. I'm dealing so I don't pass my hurt and anxiety onto my kids. Yes, absolutely. And if you don't have kids yet, or if maybe you won't ever have kids and, that's the stage of your life that you're in, having kids is a huge trigger for this stuff because you're essentially reliving your family. And when I had kids, I thought I was okay. Like I had anxiety, my adult life, but I was able to suppress it. I was able to numb it and like hide it. And I was okay. I dealt with life and life was okay. Um, but when I had kids, I wasn't able to do that anymore because there were so many triggers, and I found myself, my father's voice came out of my voice, and the actions and the force and the control and the rage, the anger. I found that coming out of myself, and I'm like, who is this? This isn't me. What's going on here? And I knew, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's my dad. Um, and so that is when I had this huge wake up call that I need to do something about this because I'm not going to allow my children to grow up in the same environment that I grew up in. This is just not, and I had told myself when I was, probably 6 years old, I remember saying to myself, I will do it differently when I have kids. And so that's been one of my biggest motivations for this work is to do it differently with my kids, which has been a lot of healing and recovery work for myself, and to help other parents do it differently for their kids. And if you're experiencing this stuff, um, just want you to know that every family has some kind of dynamic like this in their family. Every family has a need for some kind of healing. And so you're not alone. And if you want to go deeper into this and you want to start getting some transformative results for yourself and for your family, then just let me know because I can help you to determine, what the root cause of your specific situation is. And I can help you with some next steps. And we could talk about recharge. We could talk about some, other ways that we can work together. But I can help you through this and I can help you get to the other side of it so that you can start enjoying your life more. You can start being yourself. You can start giving your kids a different experience than what you had. So just let me know if you want to do that. And let me know what your biggest takeaway from this video was in the comments. And we will talk soon. All right. Have a wonderful rest of your day. If you liked this episode, then share it with your friends. And if you want to go deeper, then head on over to releasetheroot.com to get started. See you there.